I've never known a love so steady.
Okay guys, so I'm gonna do a, you coming? I'm gonna do a quick update. I originally started this vlog, it was because I had made this decision to show my horses, do something for myself, do the stuff I wanted to do, and I was gonna do it, and I was gonna show you the mental side of trying to get to a place where I could make that happen. And it was inspired from a drive to a lesson where I kind of started to freak out and I didn't know why. And what it's turned into is not that, because the decision for me to show at least reined cow horse has changed. We found the same issue that Smarty had in her. And so me pushing her that hard and showing her is not going to be in her best interest for longevity purposes. So we have changed the plan. Let's sit down. So basically now the deal is I can't push them physically in that way or they will break down. I'll have to start injecting them. I'll have to start doing a bunch of other stuff, and that's not my, I just don't want to go there with them. I have to think of what's really actually important, and their health obviously is the top priority. So also, the deeper part of the work that we're diving into is this particular vlog was inspired because my horse stopped letting me halter him, and and it correlates with a lot of the deeper work that I've been doing with myself and with my clients. So I found it really interesting. The other thing that I found really good about it is that I feel like if this were to happen to any of my clients, I think that it would really do a number on them mentally. Like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden my horse won't let me halter them. You know, what does this mean? Should I call the vet? Should I call the pet psychic? You know, what should I do? This seems like it shouldn't be happening. And I'm here to tell you that there's reasons for everything, and it does not mean any of those things. It does not mean you're a bad horse owner. It does not mean you're a bad trainer. It does not mean any of those things. I have a deeper understanding. What is happening? I have a deeper understanding of it now, and so I thought it would be helpful to share. And just me putting that out there in a post, actually, a lot of you had said, that's great, I'm going through something similar, and I would like to see and hear and understand. So basically, here's the deal. I started doing the shadow work challenge. I started to get more disciplined with my own practices in January. And as a trainer, as somebody teaching, what happens is you get very large lessons. The hard stuff does not go away. The hard stuff, hey! The hard stuff becomes easier to deal with. You end up with tools that help you move through it quicker, help you get the lessons faster, help you integrate them faster, and then help you grow and do the work. So here we go. The shadow work that I started doing with people. I did it with myself, and then I took clients through a 11, 12-day little challenge that we did, and people had amazing results from stuff that I did not expect. But it's basically the same thing that I'm going through with him not letting me touch his mouth. I'll take you through the shadow work thing, and then I will, I'll talk a little bit about how I get horses over being cinchy, and, you know, food aggression, blanket aggression, any of those things this really applies to. So, the shadow work. Identifying some beliefs that you have, identifying emotions that show up that are not necessarily emotions that feel that comfortable to experience. Anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, any of those, resentment, you know, regret, rejection, any of that stuff. That's the stuff you feel in your body. So when you think about that emotion, you say, how do you know you're experiencing that emotion? It's because you feel it. You feel it in your body, you feel it in a certain place in your body. When you feel something like that enough times, your body starts to want to move away from it. So if you cannot completely disassociate from that part of your body and have it go numb and not have it feel as painful or uncomfortable, it will do that. Next level, you start numbing. So you go on social media, You smoke it away, you drink it away, you, whatever it is, whatever your, mode of suffering is. And, but what happens is there's the reason you're doing that is it's uncomfortable. There's judgment around feeling that way. And it pushes it back into your system. It leaves it stuck. That accumulation of those hormones building up, entering into your body every time a situation or a person or a relationship or whatever comes up, your body goes into that automatically. So your brain is this brilliant energy saving, computer system basically. So when you've experienced a trauma or you've experienced something consistently that does not feel good, your brain puts it into its hardwired database. You don't have to think about it anymore. Your body just responds without your brain even being involved. And so they call the body the unconscious mind. And so in order to break those patterns, why would you want to break those patterns? A, because it can cause chronic pain. It can cause disease. It causes you anxiety to feel that stuff on a regular basis. It just leaves you at a level of suffering. And if you're unconscious about it, it just keeps going until you die or you get really sick. And then you take medication, which actually doesn't address why it happened. So that's why you want to do this work. Secondly, when your body first experiences those things that have put these hardwired programs in, it's most likely because you never got to go from that stressful situation and had someone help you process it, integrate it, release it. It may not be there, but you got stuck in some level of freeze. There's something about that still remains in your body. You're still waiting for that situation to come up so that you can be ready. And we don't want that. So I'm not going to dive into the somatic releasing. I'm not going to go too deep into any of that right now. It's basically just to give you this framework of the shadow work and why I think it applies to his mouth. And so you identify it, you identify where it's in your body, what it feels like, and you learn to understand why it was put in place and how that's such a gift for you at some point in your life. Then you acknowledge it's time to release it. It's not serving you anymore. Next step is you just send it love. I hear it. I hear you. I see you. Yeah, that was hard. And this feeling sucks. And it's time to maybe move past this. Take the lessons and release the heaviness. And so the fourth part is think about toddlers, think about babies, think about how they scream, they kick, they move. Think about all of that. They know inherently, you're born knowing how to release this stuff. So when teachers come in, parents come in, caretakers, family, whatever it is, they tell you, hey, moving like that is weird. Screaming like that is not right. You can't do that here. You have to sit down, be quiet. You start to get conditioned to your body wanting to move and be in this place is wrong. And so you start to shove it down. The accumulation builds, the guilt builds around it, and you shut down that part of you that knows how to release it and complete these cycles. So what I invite people to do is when you feel it, acknowledge it. You start to recognize when it's happening. And you take guided inspiration from your body and how it wants to move when it's in those moments. So it does dive into a little bit of the somatic releasing. But don't think too much about it. You don't have to know why. You don't have to understand where it came from. Just know this is this sensation that comes up. It's not necessarily healthy. It doesn't feel good. I know that I don't like the way it feels. It makes me want to drink, smoke, shop, whatever. And I know that's not sustainable. So I'm going to do a pattern interrupt where you recognize it, and instead of automatically defaulting to that stuff you've done before, you're going to take a deep breath and you're going to acknowledge it. And then I want you to stretch. I want you to dance. I want you to jump. I want you to run. I want you to flail around. I want you to scream. I want you to sing. I want you to do whatever your body wants to do. This is about listening to the inspirations from your body. It's about listening to that guidance that you have that's beyond you. And it's about trusting that stuff. I can say this with confidence now, not because I've read it in enough books and heard it in enough of my podcasts, that I actually really got to witness several people in my one-on-one sessions, in my group sessions, and even on the online thing we just did, off of medication, having these symptoms that they've been ailed with, migraines, acid reflux, anxiety. This stuff is gone, okay? And this is the process that they took themselves through. That being said, we'll go into the haltering stuff with him. So from an early age, I've had him since he was a yearling. He was untouched. He was out in the pasture with his mama and a bunch of other mamas. And he was really, really quirky from the get-go. And he was really hard to halter break. It took a long time for me to just be able to walk into a stall and put a halter on. And this is long before I really understood a lot of this stuff. So once we got him haltered and once we understood that stuff, we realized he had either been kicked or been into some type of accident. There was a trauma to his mouth and it knocked out his teeth. And so he didn't have any of his baby teeth present, which led me to go, oh, okay, well, that's why he's a little extra guarded about his mouth. It makes total sense. I really just stopped it there. I thought if I do this enough, you know, he'll get over it. And pretty much he did, right? Like that's where we lived for a long time. You know, he's fine to carry the bridle. He's supple, he's soft. It's all there. It's not an issue. So here's the interesting part. About a week ago, he stopped letting me just halter him. He'd run from me in a stall. He would run from me in the round pen, and I have a little clip of that in there. And so I started to go, what the heck? So the deeper I go into the work, the more I can help people heal. And when I say heal, I have the ability to hold the space and guide people into the direction of their own healing. They themselves are their own healers. We're all our own healers. We all have our own medicine. Sometimes it just takes somebody else that's in the work, that's a step ahead of you, to guide you to that direction and help you. So it's not me doing this. It's everyone individually doing their own work. And so when I hear the word healer, I think, well, that's what that is, right? So as I dive deeper into this work, I get bigger lessons. And like I said, the lessons get easier to move through. But as you start to do this awareness of the discomfort and things you may have been pushing away or hiding, they come to the surface. They're not comfortable to feel, but it's there for you to complete, right? To feel, to move, to release. And so ironically, as I'm doing this work, he starts to be really guarded with his mouth. And alongside of the work, for me, it's the work I do for them is much of the same. Masterson method stuff. We talked to Jim last week and really saying, the more relaxed you get them, you're peeling away these layers of these disassociations that they've done to keep them around, but they start to feel stuff and it doesn't feel great. And how are you going to help them through that? And the way I teach people is you have to hold space for them. Like I hold space for people in sessions, and you have to be neutral. You have to be completely neutral. You have to have no agenda. You have to not be worried about what this session looks like. Okay, that space is a safe space for horses and people to express how they really feel about stuff. So I think that it might just be my deeper understanding of that, or my ability to do that at a deeper level, which allowed the mouth stuff to start to come up for him. So I think just doing the work where he was starting to relax and starting to feel stuff that he had kind of pushed away, led him to go, I don't want to experience you touching my mouth. And so instead of me going to, oh my gosh, I'm a shitty trainer, I don't know what's going on, my horse, I can't even excuse this away. I can't say it's, a past experience that he's had. I can't say any of that because it's not the story that we've had up until now. I could have made it into maybe he bumped his mouth, maybe he did something else, maybe someone else did something else. It could have gone on and on. But what I said was, what's right in front of me right now is that this horse is telling me he's uncomfortable with me touching and engaging with his mouth. I love that I have the backstory, but you don't have to. You just have to be in the moment and take guidance from what they're telling you and just be there with that. So the process that I went through in this video is that it's holding space for him to feel his mouth. His story about it is it's not safe to let things be around my mouth. It's not safe to have things come quickly at my mouth. I need to protect it. When my mouth is handled, it hurts. You know, whatever his story is, it's causing him to want to have tension and be guarded around it. It was there for a reason. And so what I have to be able to do for him is let him experience me handling his mouth and have it be a safe space for that to happen. Understanding the nervous systems, I went through it in my first vlog, and I have a video of the fundamentals about it. So if you don't understand it, go there. But really, you can't really rewrite those neural pathways and let that stuff go if you are in the sympathetic survival stress state. You have to be in the parasympathetic. So you have to let them experience the thing long enough until they switch into the different nervous system for it to actually process, for them to go, oh, let me rewrite this story about my mouth being handled. It is safe. I didn't do that before at this deep level. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I didn't understand it, whatever it looks like, but I do now. And the message that I got at the beginning of the year is that I wasn't being disciplined about the things that I was telling my clients to do. I wasn't being disciplined about meditating. I wasn't being disciplined about journaling. I wasn't being disciplined with my own horses as far as spending the time with them that they needed. I was skipping that stuff, and I could do that. I could get by just fine until you can't, you know, until the universe says, okay, it's now ready for you to learn this lesson. Maybe I can teach it better now, and so it had to be handed to me to make this video for you guys to understand it in this way. Who knows? I don't question that stuff anymore. But it's what it's about. It's an invitation to show up for my horses like I show up for my client horses, to show up for myself like I show up for people that I'm in relationships with or friendships with. And I think that's what 2021 is really about. So that's what this video is about. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. But I'll throw the video in now, and you'll kind of see the process that I go through to help him rewrite a story about what it is to have his mouth handled. And it's like you guys rewriting the story about what is it to be in a relationship? What is it to be vulnerable? What is it to trust? What is it to allow yourself to receive? What does that feel like? And so it's the same process. It's the awareness of when your shadow shows up. It's the understanding of why it's there. It's the appreciating it, hearing it, seeing it, not pushing it away. Taking that inspired movement, releasing it, and then growing from there. So I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so basically I started the session out with just a regular warm-up, getting the energy flowing, letting him get his releases through kicking, bucking, discharging that accumulated energy that may have built up over, you know, just being in a stall or anything else that would have caused his body to kind of shift into that sympathetic mode, that nervous system that is for survival and would keep him in high alert. We go in, move him around, put a little pressure on, bubble that stuff to the surface, and allow him to take that guided inspiration from his body and how he needs to release it. So that's really what I was talking about in the last part. The horses will shut down if they feel that stuff accumulate and they are restrained in any way as far as martingales or tied up or along their training journey. The trainers will, you know, maybe reprimand them for expressing themselves because they either take it personally or they take it as misbehavior. However the trainer's perspective is of the horse discharging that stuff really affects the way that they show up forward. So my thought is that I allow them to move. They get to express if they're confused. They get to express if they, you know, have pent up stuff that needs to come out. And I hold the space of neutrality where I don't make it mean anything. I don't make it mean it's aggressive. I don't mean anything. It's just the way their body needs to move right then and there. And I allow that to happen. I'm not going to go deep into the round penning itself. I will say responsiveness is always my first requirement. I need them to respond to me when I ask them to go forward. So that's always my first priority. I don't ask them to turn inside versus outside. I know that when I put the pressure on, depending on which direction they go, they tell me whether or not they're ready to connect with me or not. So if they want to turn to the outside and run the other way, that's fine. I just take it as information as to where their mind is at. If they want to turn to the inside, then I know at some level they feel safe enough to connect with me, and that's why they're engaging with me and making that turn towards me. I used to, in my old training mindset, would keep the pressure on until they looked at me. What I really realized was I was teaching horses to be obedient versus teaching horses to co-create an outcome that I wanted with me, because they were connected to me, because they felt safe enough to do that. So I'm not going to go too deep into that stuff in this video. I'm just going to let you know this is how I started this little process with him. Just moving his body, you know, having him stop, having him connect, having him switch over nervous systems, and then adding pressure to bubble up any energy that needed to be discharged, so that we could start from a pretty cleared out space when I started to go into asking him to start to look at his mouth and the discomfort around his mouth being handled. So this was the first part. So that stress, that fight or flight was activated. The story he had was that this thing that was happening was not safe, and I, as the human being, did not slow down and respect it when he gave me the face. And essentially what happened was he did what he needed to do in his mind, was to flee away from the situation. I didn't restrain him, and because of that, he was allowed to discharge that energy by moving away quickly. And there was a pause after, and it allowed him to assess whether or not he was then safe, which is when that lick and chew came in. So here what I'm doing after we had that little situation was I'm just looking for where his threshold is. Where can I come into your space that
you feel safe. Right here, he got a little tense, so I said, I recognize that. I just did something that may or may not have crossed some boundaries. You know, you told me you were tense about something and I kept going. So now I'm just going to reestablish, hey, I am listening to you. You can tell me what you need. So there he gave me a release because I respected that and I backed out of his space. And a lot of this, you guys, is about just listening to them. And the big message that he was giving me that I probably have been ignoring for most of his life is that he really needs me to slow down. Give him time to process things. I go really fast with him and his sister because they're really good horses. I'm recognizing that they hold a lot more tension in parts of their body that normally if I was working with a client horse, I would stay in it longer and help them with it more. And for some reason, I don't with them. And that's what this entire little mouth haltering situation, I believe, is coming in for me. Now that I think I'm in a place where I can really hold that space of hearing him and her and what do you need? And it was just the big message was just slow down and help me deal with these bigger things that I've needed to deal with for a really long time that I haven't been able to on my own. This horse is really good at giving himself releases. He's really good at being self-aware of his surroundings and where he's at. If he starts to max out, he'll yawn, he'll stretch. He's really, as far as the work we've done together, got that part handled. But what I always tell people is that his capacity to hold stressful things, his container for that is really small. And if he doesn't manage himself that way, or if I don't step in and help him when I start to feel that tension, he tends to overflow really quickly and he'll need to discharge that energy by spooking or, you know, skirting off a little bit or whatever it looks like for him for that day. So me starting to honor that and recognize that about him and get curious about whether or not I can expand that container for him and that capacity to release at an even deeper level so that he can hold the stress of different things that happen and process them in a better, more sustainable, less stressful way for him is really what I'm reaching for. So here it's just a matter of him going, are you going to step back into my space if I tell you that I'm not ready again? And I have to be willing to stand here as long as I need. And that's with every horse individually. People really want their horses to feel relaxed and they want to be able to be in that space with them. But our agenda may be coming from a good place and wanting that for our horses, but it's still an agenda. And that tension of that agenda, that anticipation of what we want is playing into the tension in our own body. So it's that willingness to release all of that. Really, because I stood there for this long, that's when he can kind of start to let his guard down a little bit and go, okay, like, you know, you really just came in hot. What the heck was that about? I got tense and I told you that I wasn't ready and you did it anyways. And there he engaged a little bit and I acknowledged it. I said, thank you for, you know, accepting me in closer, and I'm going to relieve the pressure and back off. His thing is really when he's ready to let his guard down and get into that space and co-create with me, he leans into my space and he really focuses on me. That's really how I know he's ready to connect and co-create, is when he can engage with me and make that eye contact and to show that he's comfortable in that space. So by them moving their heads left and right and in a slow, relaxed manner, you realize the tension is leaving the body. They are really there. A lot of trainers will say, hey, if your horse looks left or right, make sure you draw their attention back to you. My whole thing is that is what actually helps them switch back over into that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest, relaxation, restore, that nervous system that they can actually absorb and integrate what you are experiencing with them so that they have the opportunity to rewrite the story about the situation they're in, for them to actually absorb, hey, this is safe for me to be in this moment, and not have to go into that unconscious space and just run off and react. So always going back to remembering we need to be able to dip into their triggered places to show them that it is safe and that they do not need to go into that automatic response. So you saw him there raise his head and tense when I put my hand on his back. That's where he got tense before, when I haltered him to show you guys what he'd been doing. And I just kept going rather than pause. So that's even right here when I put my hand back up there. The first time he raised his neck, this time he just stayed the same. Now he's dropping his head a little bit and letting his guard down. His ear is starting to focus on me. So their initial response is to freeze. That's the tensing of the body. Then they decide, do I need to fight or do I need to run away? And if you get through on that, then they can assess, maybe actually don't need to do either. That's the importance of going really slow and holding the space of neutrality and no agenda, because then your energy feels safe for them to process that decision. And it takes a long time, and sometimes it's like watching paint dry. But when you realize what you're doing and what you're creating for them, you realize at what a deep level you are healing those parts of them, and you understand the importance of the work, then it really changes your ability to be empathetic and patient. So there, he's dropping his head a little bit more. Because he is who he is, you'll start to notice he'll start to look in my direction when he starts to get into a different place. His ear will come on me. His eye will look at me. It's very subtle with him. But those are the indications that I know as him as an individual that he gives me that it's okay to move on. Now remember, we still have to dip into those places of discomfort for them, to hold the space for them to understand this isn't something you have to be worried about anymore. And that requires you to be, again, holding that place of neutrality. So now that the tension has left his body, I'll say, hey, like, let's connect. Let's do something that I know you like. Let's give you some scratches. There's a good, nice release. Shaking off that accumulated energy. Allowing that movement to happen. Let's remember, we're taking this inspiration from our horses. What do they do to release that accumulation and that discomfort that they've found in a couple spots of their body? They shake it off. They move, they run, they roll, they do what they need to do if they're in a healthy place of being allowed to do that. And that's what helps keep them cleared out and their container cleared out enough to hold, incidences that they have to assess. Got some more releases. Just reminding him it's safe. Safe to be vulnerable. It's safe to have me in your space. A few minutes ago or a few seconds ago, you saw me stretch. So pay attention to your guys' body during this process, because it's actually more important than their bodies. When I start to feel my body accumulate tension or denseness or anything, I stretch, I'll move, I'll walk away, I'll shake my hands, I'll, whatever it looks like. This is your opportunity to take that inspiration to clear out your own body. These horses can bubble up all of our stuff. That's what they're good for. It can bring up our anxiety. It can bring up our, hey, why isn't this happening like I thought it was going to happen? It can bring up our self-doubt. It can bring up everything. So here's an amazing opportunity for you guys to look at that and continue the introspective work of, where is there tension in my body? If I release this tension for myself, can it help support them feeling safe to release it within themselves? Absolutely. So there's much more going on here than just you waiting for your horse to want to engage more with you. So he's giving me a couple releases. The tension is not there as I move around. He's kind of saying, okay, like, I can be down with you being in here. I forgive you for moving too quickly earlier. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to check in on the right side. Same thing. I put my hand on, he didn't tense, he softened, and then I scratched and he showed me he was into it. So I'll just go there and I'll back off a little bit. Right there, he's holding a little bit of tension in his body. He didn't really relax like he did on the other side. So I may have gone in too quick, but here's a nice little stretch to the left, and then there's that release. And the now slipping out of that moment of freeze state. He's looking around, he's looking left or right. Right there is what I was really talking about him. When he's ready to engage and co-create, he really connects with me. There's something about him needing to kind of release to the left like that. There he goes. Again, inspiration, allowing the movement they need to move to release. They know what they need to do. And when you hold a quiet and patient and empathetic, neutral place for them to listen to their own bodies to release that stuff, that's when they can peel back those layers. Same thing for us. Here's the correlation. You know, you have to be in a safe relationship. You have to be in a safe space within yourself to say, hey, I'm going to be still. I'm going to see where the tension is my body. And I'm going to take that inspired action to move like I need to move to release it. So there he stepped into me. And I'll tell you that the message that he was giving me was, I would rather you halter me first from the right side. And again, he was telling me repeatedly, I need you to go slow. So right here, my sister actually started to walk up, and he started to get a little bit distracted. And rather than me pausing and starting over, I tried to keep going even though I was distracted. And he backed off and said, hey, wait a minute, you're not paying attention fully to me, and I'm not ready. And so I paused, finished having the conversation with my sister, and then went back in and started where I started. Hey, can I come into your space again? And right there, he dropped his head and relaxed pretty quickly and said, yes, I forgive you for that last moment. And right there, he said, no, absolutely not. I already told you, I want you to halter me from the right. And because your human being is so easily distracted that you've already forgotten the message that I told you. Go slow and go from the right. I stepped back in, said sorry about that. He dropped his head down and relaxed rather than tensed. So remember, we need to put them in their discomfort. Just like when we do the shadow work, we need to say, hey, like, let's dip into this now. Here's the halter. How are you going to respond to this? You know, how are you feeling about me coming close? And he kind of moved away a little bit. So I said, okay, I see that. You're not really ready for that. Right there, he moved away again. I backed off. But I'm saying stay in it with me, though. I'm not going to go faster than you're allowing me to, but I also don't want you to completely disconnect and disengage. So this is where the pattern interrupt comes in. So the last couple times I tried to do this, he bolted and kind of ran off. So I don't want that pattern to become a habit. Since he's already done it 4 or 5 times, that's when you know, hey, I need to step in and we need to change this up. So the roping around the neck is saying, hey, stay in it with me. I'm still going to honor you. I'm still going to not do things before you're ready. But also you need to dip into this so that we can start to rewrite the story about what it is to have your face handled, what it is to have the halter near you, me being very, very, very present when I do it from, again, a neutral place. So here he's saying, you touching me on my face right here is not comfortable. And right here I have about an air gap, like I'm not actually even touching him. And he's showing me, hey, I don't really like that. It's stressing me out. So I'm just saying, hey, let's check back in. He's in a bit of a frozen state right now. In order for him to be able to absorb and understand that this is a safe thing, he needs to be in a different nervous system. So I'm going to dip in. I'm going to dip into that sympathetic. I'm going to say, hey, look, here, I know this is the thing that makes you uncomfortable. Clearing that space, clearing that attachment to that old energy of fear and protection around his nose and face. letting him be in it from me having no agenda. Just a nice neutral. I'm touching your face and you're not dying. I'm touching your face and I'm not putting the halter on. There's a nice drop of the head, starting to relax a little bit. Now coming out of that freeze state, dipping back into the direction of the parasympathetic where he can absorb the fact that nothing bad actually just happened. So I want to bring him back into his body. I'm going to rub on him a little bit and say, hey, like, we're here, you're safe. Let's experience this, not in a checked out way, but in our bodies. Basically what I'm going to do is just stay in that area of discomfort for him until he starts to sneak back over to the other side, that down regulation, that where he can actually understand what's going on and that nothing threatening is actually happening. So we're saying stay in this. I know that you'd rather check out and disassociate and look off and run off, but I need you to stay with me and so you can experience this differently. I really do want to leave that space for him to move his body the way he needs to at a certain level. I don't want to restrain it and hold him here and force my hand on his mouth, but there he got a little bit of a release. So I'm going to go back again and say, hey, this is the part when I do with the halter that he freaks out. It's my right hand being on the right side of his mouth. So I'm just going to let him experience that and go, hey, look, this isn't scary. This isn't a threat. But I've got to stay there long enough for him to switch over, or he won't actually absorb that it's not something that he needs to be worried about. His unconscious mind, his body, it says, hey, when this happens, this is our response, this is what keeps us safe, needs to be shifted. And the way that you shift it is by putting them in that scenario, but letting them experience it from you being present and neutral. Not, hey, hold still, I'm going to put this halter on you. We have to get on and ride. We've got things to do. It's a different energy. It's this, we're doing this intentionally. I'm doing this, holding the space for you to be able to release this worry you have around your face being touched on the right side when I'm on the left. And I think that's why he'd prefer me to go over to the right, because it's a pattern interrupt, but it's also, you know, he hasn't ran off from me when I'm on that side, you know. So I think that the progression of going over there and doing it from there is what he was requesting for me. So now the amount of tension he has, just because I have the halter closer to his face, is what we'll work on. And it's like, hey, the halter's here, but it's not going on you. I'm not forcing this on you. The lead rope around his neck is in case he wants to run off. I'm not going to let him get there. I would rather him discharge his energy in these different ways, like the head to the right, there he goes. You know, those movements are what I want. That's like a conscious movement that keeps him in the moment rather than him just running off and getting the release from there. So there are different ways for them to release this energy, and this is another one. So you don't want to restrain them and keep them from doing that. You want to keep them from completely running off, but that's because that only perpetuates the, hey, I got the relief from this thing that I thought was going to get me or that I thought was a threat. You got to stay in it. You got to stay in this discomfort, but you got to make sure the container for them to experience the discomfort is a safe space. That is the most important part. So again, allowing them space to move how they want to move. He's processing right now. This holding this time in between is where everything happens. It's also the good time to check in with your own body. And also, this is the hardest part for people because they feel like nothing's happening. But I'm going to tell you, right here, I'm witnessing the left side of his mouth twitching a lot. His jaw is twitching. He's exploring. Hey, what if I can just relax the base of my neck and my shoulders and my pole and my jaw after being handled that way? What does that feel like? And if I can hold that container of safe energy, then he gets to explore that. Maybe I am safe with having my face handled. Maybe I don't need to run off. So here again, taking inspiration from your own bodies. I was having an accumulation in my lower back. Do what you need to do. That energetic field that we hold is very important to their healing process. So if we've got all this stuff going on for us and we're saying, hey, it's safe for you to let down, it's safe for you to be vulnerable, it's safe for you to release, and then they're in your space and you're all tense and in survival mode, then they're going to go, nuh-uh, like this doesn't feel safe at all. You know, I don't trust this at all. So the work is really for both of you. So here I'm going to honor that request. If you want to do this from the right, that would be the best for me. And that time when I held the halter up, if you notice, he looked in and to the right. That is his indication to me that he's ready to co-create with me. He's ready to maybe explore a request I have of him. That's how I knew that I could go in. Every horse is different. So it's about learning your horse. It's about starting to listen to your horse. And everyone gets those messages differently. Sometimes it's just a knowing. Sometimes you hear words. Sometimes you see pictures. You just have to trust what you're getting and doubt the doubt. So I heard that from, I believe Jim Masterson had said it on someone's podcast. And she was on my podcast. And, that's what it was about. When your intuition kicks in, when you're setting that intention to get those messages, what do you need from me right now? And if you have doubt of what it is that you're getting, doubt that. It's an interesting way to go about things. So I'm going to say, hey, let's check in. Let's stay present. I know this is the side you're more worried about, but let's explore what it feels like to stay in this moment and maybe move through the discomfort. And there he was ready to allow the haltering to be done. So that process was pretty long, and obviously people would say, hey, I don't have a lot of time to spend 45 minutes putting my horse's halter on, but because I know this is an underlying issue for him, we needed to spend the time, and I've skipped over it for a long time. What I'm doing here is an exercise that helps them drop into that parasympathetic. So he still had a little apprehension when I put the halter on. He looked to the right. But again, I wanted him to experience the thing that was uncomfortable for him, but give him the time to really understand it wasn't scary. He has to be in the parasympathetic to process that. So I put the halter on, and then I immediately started doing this little exercise that we do that helps him shift back into the parasympathetic. You really have to do this exercise as a prerequisite, something I spend time doing when I very first meet horses, so that when I do start to work on stuff they're more triggered on and by, then I can always at least end with them being in a relaxed frame of mind. So this is the next time that I've haltered him since then. So I just came into his stall, just checking in with him. Hey, remember, I'm going to go onto that right side, check in for the day. How are you feeling about me touching your right side? He's staying pretty relaxed. I'm staying neutral because I actually don't care if I get the halter on him today. I'm going to let him kind of process. Usually what I do is I go in, he walks away from me, I put the lead rope on his neck, I drag him to me, and then I put the halter on anyways. So I'm having to rewrite the story of what happens when I come into a stall to get him for him, because I've done that. I've set that pattern up, and I'm allowing him to step away. I'm allowing him to do what he feels he needs to do in that moment to get a little bit more settled. I'm focusing on my body. How do I feel? Where's the tension? Where's the denseness? Where do I need to release? But I'm having to change this habit, this pattern that I've done for so long with him, and it was mostly in the stall. And it's me going in, quickly throwing the halter on him, taking him out, and him disassociating from his mouth because there's that oversensitivity and that discomfort wrapped up in it. And in order for him to be okay with me just doing that the way I've been doing it, then he needed to not feel it until we both got to a place where it was time for it to be felt, which is kind of what led us here. So today my intention was I'm willing to sit here as long as you need. I don't even need to put the halter on you today. I'll lead you to the pasture with the rope around your neck if I have to, but I'm not going to go backwards. I'm not going to discredit everything I did the day before just because I'm going to get in a hurry. So here he's staying pretty relaxed. He's dropping his head. Just a few seconds ago he engaged with me. It was very slight, and here he's going, oh no, she's changing stuff, she's changing stuff. So I'll just allow him to resettle, reminding him we don't have to go fast. I just want to check in with you and remind you that it is safe for me to be around you. And he's kind of more in his body now, and let's say, hey, look, we've got this halter. How do you feel about that? There's his engagement, his looking towards me. He's moving into my space, which lets me know that he's comfortable with me doing the next step. Like I said, remember, every horse is different. Some horses that may not be their thing, but this is his. And so for all intents and purposes of this video, I try to explain that part. So I see me haltering you as it's not a fast thing. I promised that I'd take my time, and I promised that I'd do it from the right first so that he could just experience that going over his nose, going over his whiskers, going over the sensitive parts of his face. And here he's like, oh, I really don't want to do this again. And me just holding the space of, I'm going to really explain to you and show you that this is safe. So here he moved into my space, he engaged with me. That's how I know, that's the indication. And then he allowed me to put the halter on. So those gestures that they give you, those little things that they do as individuals, those are the things you have to learn. Those are the things you learn in the silence. Those are the things you learn when you pay attention to what they're trying to tell you. Where do I begin? So I originally did the chat that I had with you at the beginning of this video from here. And then I thought, oh gosh, maybe I need to show you guys how to do that head dropping exercise. And then I thought, no, I can't do it here in this stall. Let's do it out in the barn aisle. And then we got out in the barn aisle, and then I realized there was no way that we'd be able to show it to you. And then I really realized, you know what, that's supposed to be a second video. So I will do that other exercise with you guys because I know that that's going to be a question that gets asked. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I want you guys to remember that even if you're a horse owner or a professional, it does not matter. You do not get out of having the experience of being a human being. And when weird stuff, like all of a sudden the horse you've owned his whole life decides he doesn't want to be haltered by you, don't get discouraged. There's a message in it for you, and keep reaching for the answer. Just listen to them. They'll let you know.